The Land Conference report has been released. It follows the Land Conference, which occurred in August of last year. The report brought various stakeholders together, reflects on the failed promise of tenure security in South Africa, customary land rights and dispossession. From the University of Cape Town, Ncedo Mngqibisa Mining Researcher from LARC, the Land and Accountability Research Centre, as well as Nokwanda Sihlali Land Researcher from LARC UCT. Both joined us to unpack further. Very good afternoon to the both of you. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Hi, Liesl. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Liesl.
Perhaps we could speak to the need to hold the conference based on the shifting dynamics within South Africa. Nokwanda, do you want to give us some context on that?
Yes, Liesl. The conference, as you said, was hosted last year in August. It was a very important conference because it was centered around the constitutional promise of protecting the informal land rights of about 18 million raw citizens in South Africa. So it was a very important one because it also convened activists, academics and allies to draw attention back to the urgent need to secure the tenure, land and resource rights of vulnerable communities as a precondition for development and not necessarily just for a trade-off. We sought to inform and enrich the public, academic and political discourse about land rights, ongoing threats to these rights, and the urgent need for legal measures to protect and enhance tenure security in line with the Constitution.
Thank you for that context. Ncedo, let me bring you into the conversation. Obviously, pertinent themes were discussed, and it follows the anniversary, as some have dubbed it, of the 1913 Land Act. Walk us through what was unearthed.
Many things were unearthed, but one of the requests that was coming from the communities was that, look, the policies that actually affect us always go above our heads, and sometimes we are just blindfolded as communities. So the request was that NGOs like LARC should come and workshop these communities around policies such as interim protection of informal land rights, which is called IPILRA. So, and also LARC also, because we are working within the institution of higher learning, we also have seminars among students. So within that milieu, that the idea that also let's have an anniversary about this 1913 Land Act as a way of reflecting on the land policies from 1913 up until as recent as the TKLA Act of 2019. Yeah, it comes from that, and we will be making a lot of reflections from NGO to public intellectuals like Sabelo and activists and people like Toby, who are actually legal experts involved intimately with land laws.
All right, thank you for that context. I want to bring Nokwanda back into the conversation because it's Youth Month, and I want to address the plight of youth in relation to land reform. We have to look at the impact that it has for youth to date in addressing inequalities and also dispossession in relation to land reform in South Africa, and really what has been the failed promise of tenure security in South Africa to date. How would you begin to weigh in on that?
Yes, that's a very good question. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we just won a case at the Constitutional Court, which said that the Traditional Khoisan and Leadership Act is actually invalid, but based on the public participation process, which obviously then Parliament needs to look at again. So that entire case can take about maybe 10 years to go to the Concord. So if the elders of a community are the ones with the knowledge about who owns what type of land or what's happening on the land, the youth need to also be informed. The youth are the largest voting cohort in South Africa, and they have the power to actually change the direction of politics in South Africa. So if they feel not protected in terms of their land rights, and the voices are not necessarily amplified when we're engaging with land issues, then obviously they're going to be disgruntled, and there's not going to be any engagement with, for example, as we've seen that the elections are coming up, there's an interplay of land also means more than just economics. It means it has social value, it has cultural value to the youth as well. And so if their rights are not necessarily protected, especially those of people who live in the former Bantu states who have experienced pain and anguish over and over again, then it makes them quite despondent. And it's very important to be accountable on this constitutional promise.
Ncedo, do you think at this point there are big concerns as we head into elections? What comes to mind?
First of all, let me wish electorate free and fair elections. I think the concern is always that the electorate are not well versed in terms of the policies of the organizations, particularly the ones that affect them. And in particular here, I'm speaking to the rural electorate in terms of laws that are passed that actually affect them negatively. So the concern is that maybe the opportunity is not always there for them to be able to understand what each political party actually represent in terms of those policies that affect them.
I wonder if we also look at what's been undertaken today, the significance of land claims with specific reference to unresolved and even new claims. How would you weigh in on that process that's also underway, Nokwanda?
Yeah, I mean, that's also something that we've also been monitoring for quite some time. And as I'm saying, if we're connecting it specifically with youth, the biggest thing with restitution specifically is claims were supposed to be, the first initial claims were supposed to be done by 1998. So now, if from 1998 we're dealing with the same thing in 2023, who is actually holding that space of knowing what is happening with the land, especially when people, especially youth, try to find work in urban areas. So it's very important that when we look at the three legs of land reform, which is redistribution, restitution, and tenure security, we understand that there's another form that needs to come in, which is around land administration, because how do you administer all of these components of land if you're going to be dealing with them in such separate ways? So it's very important when it comes to restitution that information sharing is still there. And I know that there are projects called Project Kuyasa that has been implemented by the Restitution Commission to ensure that there's a speediness that they're going to approach the old order claims with. So those are some of the things that bring optimism to what's supposed to be done. But obviously we have things like the Lamasa judgment, the second one, which says you can't open new old order claims if you haven't dealt with the ones from 1998. So we just need to find a systematic and comprehensive way of government or parliament engaging with all these laws in a way that speaks proactively to one another.
Which obviously speak to state capacity, perhaps also concerns about corruption, addressing gender imbalances, amongst many other issues. I think there's a lot to discuss, but I want to thank you both for your time with us here on the SABC and for weighing in on the back of that report released from the University of Cape Town, Ncedo Mngqibisa Mining Researcher, as well as Nokwanda Sihlali, again, a land researcher at LARC, the Land and Accountability Research Center at the University of Cape Town, weighing in again on that land conference report that had been released, looking at some of the strides taken, but also the land and agrarian reform in South Africa to date, the implications for the youth as well as we edge closer to elections.